bones, muscles, and organs affected by microgravity over?
They absolutely, in fact, we have to exercise 2.5 hours a day, and that's because we don't have to work very hard at all the other 21.5 hours of the day. In fact, if we don't exercise, our bones will lose a lot of mass by the time we get home. So we try to stay strong in both muscles and bones, and our organs tend to do very well, but there are certainly some changes over.
How does it feel to have achieved your life goal of being an astronaut? Over.
Well, it is wonderful to be a part of an incredible team that does amazing things and be able to contribute in any small way. But I'll tell you, it is a job, and really my life's goal is to be the best dad and husband that I can be. And so that's what I am very passionate about, in addition to being able to do a very, very cool job. Over.
If an astronaut becomes very ill in space and needs urgent medical care, what happens? Do doctors travel with you? Over.
Well, coincidentally, we have a doctor on board. He is an astronaut, and that was his training before becoming an astronaut. He was a physician. But you don't have to have a doctor on board. We do have fundamental training that we all get so that we can take care of each other in that kind of a situation. But if it's really bad, we can always get into our lifeboat, which is just the spacecraft that we flew up here, and we can come home. We could probably be home in probably 4 or 6 hours if we really needed to. Over.
What would happen if planet Earth had Mars low gravity? Over.
You know, I don't know exactly what would happen, but because that gravity is so much lower than what we're used to on Earth, I think it's only about 40% of what we experience. You can imagine that life would be very different because the weather would behave much differently, plant life would behave much differently, people would have evolved differently, and so the impacts, I think, would be significant. So we have a very special planet, and we need to take great care of it.
What do you do while you're on board of the International Space Station? Over.
Our days are very busy. We are doing experiments on behalf of the researchers on the ground. We're also doing a lot of activities to maintain the space station. It is a very big and complex and getting a little bit older spacecraft. And so there's a lot that we need to do. And sometimes we can actually even make it better. We can do upgrades. Recently we did some spacewalks where we put up new solar arrays so that the space station can keep generating the power it needs to do those important experiments. Over.
If you could change anything about your work, what would it be? Over.
I think for me, this job would be even cooler if I got to be one of those researchers. If I was part of a team and we were doing an experiment together and I was running that experiment while I was up here. I do enjoy being a part of a lot of different experiments, but if there was one that I knew very, very well, that would be very interesting to me. Over.
During their stay in space, do astronauts have any working schedule to keep? Over.
Yes, very much so. In fact, this is a 10-minute break for me in the middle of a very busy day, which I'm very happy to get to do. But our days tend to start about 7:30 in the morning and they go until 7:30 at night. And we are constantly hopping from one event to the other. And again, that is either an experiment or doing things that the space station itself requires. It's very interesting. We get to see a lot of different things. So at the end of the day, we may be tired, but it seems really, really rewarding because we've done so many very different things. Over.
While they are in the space station, do astronauts play video games during their free time? Over.
So we probably don't play the video games that you're imagining, but we do use things that seem like video games to stay current and proficient at what we need to do. For example, we have a computer simulation of flying the robotic arm. We have a giant robotic arm on the space station that we use for a variety of things, catching cargo vehicles. My friend Nicole and my other friend Koichi flew me around. I was on the end of the robotic arm when we were doing a spacewalk. So we have a computer simulation that allows us to stay we're doing spacewalks if we ever needed to. We have virtual reality up here that helps us train and be ready to do that. Over.
What sensations or effects occur during re-entry into Earth's orbit? Over.
Well, I haven't done that part yet. I've been up here about 4 months, and we have not gone home yet. This is my first flight, but we have trained for it quite a bit. And so the sensations are going to be, well, first of all, we're going to be experiencing gravity that we haven't felt for quite a while. And so we're going to start having, we'll have our blood start coming down to our legs where it hasn't spent a lot of time recently. And we'll also be experiencing accelerations on our bodies. So we'll experience some G's, but they won't go from our head to our feet. They'll really go back through our chest. And so we feel like somebody's sitting on our chest. Over.
Since there's no atmosphere in space, have you ever been woken up by the sun photons while you're sleeping? Over.
I've never been woken up by it, but I've certainly seen it as I'm falling asleep. And I did physics before I became a test pilot. And so part of that physics was making detectors, not unlike our eyeballs up here. And so when I see one of those things happen, I get really excited about it because it reminds me of my previous life as a physicist. Over.
Do astronauts have to follow any specific rules or laws when in space? Over.
Well, no country can own space, so there's no issues with that, but we do have certain rules, such as we can't have weapons of mass destruction in space, but we, as a community up here in space, we all just make sure that we are good partners for everyone else, and it's just like a big family. Everyone does their part and contributes to this and makes an incredible human space exploration program.
Let's imagine that humans have turned in some way the planet Earth a place impossible to live in. Would it be possible for humans to live in an exoplanet? Over.
I think it would be possible to live on an exoplanet, but it would require so much effort. In fact, more effort and a greater accomplishment than anything humans have accomplished. So it could be done. You could imagine doing it even on Mars, where you have a big bubble just under. But right now, I think our focus should be on this planet. It is such a beautiful and perfect planet, and we need to make sure that it stays healthy for a long, long time. Over.
What should we study if we want to become an astronaut? Over.
I think no matter what you want to do, you need to study what you love and what you're passionate about. And if that happens to be something like math or science or engineering or medicine, that may lead to being an astronaut. But definitely do what you love, and no matter what happens, you're going to have won the lottery in terms of what you're doing for your career. Over.
What do you like to do when you are bored in space? Over.
It sounds cliche, but I haven't been bored yet. We are incredibly busy up here, and when we're not on the schedule, there's so much to do, including even just looking out the window at this gorgeous planet. But I'll tell you one fun thing that we get to do. In fact, I just did it yesterday. The space station did a boost, which means it just comes up to a slightly higher altitude because it had been dragging down over the past month or two. And so what I did is with my friend Anya, we just hung out in the middle of a module, not touching anything. And then as the rockets fired, the space station moved around us. And so it looked like we were translating down the space station. Over.
Do you think your life dream of being an astronaut has in some way affected your social life? Over.
It has, because we live in Houston, and it keeps us in Texas, and I'm from, and so that keeps us away from our family and friends, at least on a daily basis, but we get to stay in touch with them and see them as often as we can. Over.
During takeoff, how do astronauts feel both physically and psychologically? Over.
On launch day, we are physically as strong as we've ever been, and probably psychologically as well, because we're so incredibly well trained The people on the ground who get us ready for this don't leave a single stone unturned. So we are ready to go and excited to get to work. Over.
How do astronauts entertain themselves during their free time in space? Over.
We have lost signal now from ground station.
Yes, I see Claudio, but
A preparação começou muito tempo antes.
Cerca de um ano e meio. Envolvemos em vários projetos, claro, e tivemos que assistir a várias sessões. Trabalhamos muito, claro, em âmbito do nosso projeto ISS.
Concentração máxima na sala de monitorização da Anacom em Ponta Delgada. 19 alunos do 12º ano da Escola Secundária de Lagoa estão a poucos minutos de concretizarem o sonho de falar com um astronauta da NASA em missão no espaço. Pela primeira vez ocorreu uma ligação em direto entre os Açores e a Estação Espacial Internacional.
Desde pequena tenho muito interesse no espaço e agora poder falar com um astronauta e responder à minha pergunta é muito bom.
Também pela primeira vez no espaço, o astronauta americano Josh Cassada respondeu durante cerca de 11 minutos a 16 perguntas, das mais triviais às mais sérias.
Há muita coisa imprevisível, depende da qualidade de comunicações. Eles sabiam. Desde o momento que informasse, os Açores tinham falado para o espaço.
Pela primeira vez fizemos uma ligação de áudio e, portanto, o desafio já está feito e foi feito. Da próxima vez vamos tentar que seja por vídeo.
No final, alunos e professores do Clube de Astronomia, Geocaching e Multimédia não esconderam a satisfação.
Como é que é possível nós estarmos a falar com um astronauta no espaço? Era só no momento em que ele disse olá, mesmo pelo rádio, é que toda a gente ficou muito surpreendida.
Senti-se ali uma série de nervos, mas é normal. É uma experiência de uma vida só espetacular.
Esta oportunidade contribuiu para aumentar a literacia sobre o espaço e plantar sementes para o futuro, embora nem todos queiram ser astronautas.
Já foi quando era mais nova, mas não, já não é ser astronauta, mas tenho muito interesse em tudo o que é a ver com o espaço.
Alguns deles já estão planeados, já estavam e alguns agora concorrer este ano, que estão no 12º ano da universidade, para cursos ligados ao espaço. Engenharia aeroespacial, engenharia mecânica. Portanto, como eles são todos muito bons alunos, acredito que alguns vão lá chegar.
No próximo ano deverão ser alunos do 8º ano a ter uma oportunidade similar, mas desta vez com vídeo em direto do espaço.
Got you loud and clear aboard the ISS.
Okay, Oscar Romeo 4 India Sierra Sierra IK1SLD. Good evening, Josh. Your signal is loud and clear. Welcome on Italy. If you are ready, I'm going to pass the microphone to the first student. Over.
Wonderful, and welcome aboard the International Space Station. I'm looking forward to today. Over.
Okay, Josh, go ahead, Alexander.
Are your bones, muscles, and organs affected by microgravity? Over.
They absolutely, in fact, we have to exercise hours a day, and that's because we don't have to work very hard at all the other 21 and a half hours of the day. In fact, if we don't exercise, our bones will lose a lot of mass by the time we get home. So we try to stay strong in both muscles and bones, and our organs tend to do very well, but there are certainly some changes. Over.
How does it feel to have achieved your life goal of being an...
Antes, ensaia-se para que nada corra mal.
Faz a pergunta naquele micro, em pé, porque é aquela câmara que vocês vão estar a ser transmitidos.
A ligação direta com o espaço é um sonho que nasceu há quase 2 anos na comunidade escolar da Escola Secundária de Lagoa, na ilha de São Miguel.
Quando entrei na sala de aula e disse, olha, nós estamos a pensar concorrer para o programa educacional da NASA para tentarmos falar em direto com os astronautas que estão atualmente na estação espacial. E eles, isso é possível? E desde aí até perceber o que é que tinham que fazer, o que é que tinham que promover, até de onde é que tinham que chegar, quase que parecia, né, um sonho inalcançável para os Açores.
Mas não foi. Os alunos prepararam 20 perguntas. Foram previamente validadas pela NASA para serem respondidas pelo astronauta norte-americano Josh Cassada a bordo da Estação Espacial Internacional.
Pode substituir o aluno, mas nunca a pergunta. Porque a pergunta já está lá em cima e o astronauta não tem tempo. A gente tem 11 minutos de antena, que é entre a estação aparecer-nos a nosso alcance, do telebridge, e pôr-se. E, portanto, entre 11 minutos, a gente faz as perguntas que dá. Temos 20, que eles mandam ter.
Wonderful, and welcome aboard the International Space Station. I'm looking forward to the day. Over.
How does it feel to have achieved your life goal of being an astronaut? Over.
Well, it is wonderful to be a part of an incredible team that does amazing things and be able to contribute in any small way. But I'll tell you, it is a job, and really my life's goal is to be the best dad and husband that I can be, and so that's what I am very passionate about, in addition to being able to do a very, very cool job. Over.
No total, foram 16 as perguntas que saíram dos Açores via telefone rumo ao espaço.
Esta é uma experiência incrível, é algo inédito e espero que mais pessoas consigam ter essa experiência que nós tivemos. Estou muito feliz e fiquei muito interessada quando começou mesmo a ligação da chamada. Eu não estava mesmo, era aquele momento, vai começar agora e achei que foi mesmo muito interessante.
A minha pergunta foi se no espaço os astronautas tinham de respeitar algumas regras ou leis como temos que respeitar aqui na Terra.
E qual é que foi a resposta?
Não existem assim leis específicas, mas há uma comunidade que gera as regras de tudo o que acontece na área espacial e o astronauta diz que isso ocorre de forma fraterna entre todos os países.
Pela primeira vez na história, estabeleceu-se uma ponte de contacto direto entre os Açores e a Estação Espacial Internacional, que se encontra a 417 quilómetros do planeta Terra. Sara Sousa Oliveira e Filipe Melo, SIC São Miguel, Açores.